Muted.
In the next 6 months, one in India coming up in November, and one in Indonesia coming up in February of next year. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for being a part of this presentation and this webinar. And I want to thank all the people that worked hard to spread the word about this webinar, to invite people. I see the Salesforce Bellevue office on as a caller, so shout out to you guys, and to everyone else that's watching this webinar with other people in their office. So thank you so much for spreading the word, and thank you so much for being here. If you don't know me, my name is Fadi Alcazar, and I am one of the co-founders at Venture to Impact. If you have any questions, I've muted everybody just so we don't get feedback or just noise from the different places that people are at. So just throw them in the chat box. You can direct them at everyone, or you can direct them at me, and I will touch base on them during the presentation or at the end. And just one more thing for you guys to know about is that this session is being recorded. So I'm going to forward you the presentation as well as the recording at the end of the webinar, so you don't have to take a lot of notes or anything like that. Just sit back and enjoy. And then finally, the match rules have changed a little bit, so we'll touch on that as well today. So don't worry if you feel out of the loop. We'll be touching on all of that stuff. So, but first and foremost, welcome to this webinar. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about my work, about Venture to Impact, and about the volunteer opportunities that we are inviting you into today. But before I do that, I always like to bring it back to the mission. And so I want to start by telling you a little bit about who we are and why we do what we do. And that starts with our mission. We exist to transform individuals, families, and communities out of poverty and into lasting well-being. This is why we lead volunteer trips. This is why we create projects and run programs on the ground. This shapes the whole organization, this idea of alleviating people out of poverty, and this is what we're inviting you into today. So this is not just a volunteer experience, but we're inviting you into an ecosystem where you can volunteer and explore what it would mean for you to kind of collaborate with us, with local community members, and transform individuals, families, and communities out of poverty and into lasting well-being. Venture to Impact strategically focuses on what we call the 3E model, and we focus on education, empowerment, and economic development. So a lot of times we go into villages, we go into communities, and the first thing that we need to tackle is the idea of education. There's no basic level of education. The adults haven't gone to school, or there aren't any schools in the area or good schools in the area. So before we start doing anything, we need to alleviate the level of education in that community. And then from there, we start brainstorming and we start talking about different economic development initiatives. We start empowering people by asking them, what is it that they want to do in the community, and how can we get behind them and empower them to do that? So that's kind of the general overview of how we approach work and the different volunteer opportunities that we bring to you as potential volunteers. Over the last 9 years, we've developed a lot of expertise in 4 key areas. Micro-lending, so we've started a micro-lending program in Uganda. We've developed it to 100 lenders, and then we've given that bank back to the community, and it still exists today. It's operated by locals, and it still provides just a way for locals who do not have a way to start a business to come to get education as well as resources in terms of a loan to start their business. Entrepreneurship, we have always worked with women entrepreneurs. We've helped women entrepreneurs start, create businesses. We've helped them create products and get them to market. And we've helped on the marketing and the branding side, and on the empowerment side as well, when they've worked in an ecosystem or an environment where the community was not supportive of women to take on entrepreneurship initiatives. And computer education, we started a computer educational program in Uganda and Ecuador. We're starting to inspect that in Indonesia as well. And our volunteers have always participated in infrastructure development projects when needed. We've built orphanages, we've built schools, we've built safe homes for those who need them. And all that together compromises the poverty alleviation initiative, which is at the heart of what we do and why we do it. Our core team, myself, Fadi, I'm Jordanian. I've been living in North America here for 10.5 years. I started out in advertising, and it was interesting, but then I got this dog food client, and it broke me in the best way possible. I did not want to work for the rest of my life trying to figure out how to sell more dog food, and it wasn't just any dog food. It was dog food for dogs that like hunting and don't want to eat high-fat GMO. Anyways, it was not important. Anyways, it was just dog food that I did not want to sell anymore. So I jumped ship and I joined Ron Barbanel, who has been, he's an engineer by training, and he's been in the impact space for the last 24 years. And together we created Venture to Impact, and we would be your team leaders on both trips to India and Indonesia. And we work with local partners as well as interns and lots of people that kind of keep the trips moving, but we would be your core leadership team. I like to say that Venture to Impact exists to ignite your inner pioneer, your inner adventurer, and your inner pathfinder. We're not a program that's been around for the last 50 or 60 years, and we bring volunteers in and we tell you to move chairs from one side of the room to the other side of the room for 5 days, and then you go home and you never hear from us again. We're inviting you into an opportunity where you can come and you can explore what is it like to create impact. You can get educated about the ecosystem and the environment that our communities work with, and then we can talk together as Venture to Impact, as volunteers, as the community members on the ground about how can we collaboratively create impact that makes sense, that is sustainable altogether. So this is an invitation into our ecosystem and into our family, and an invitation for you to explore the path less traveled, I guess, when it comes to development and volunteering. So the first volunteer opportunity that I want to talk to you about today is in India, and it's going to take place in November, from November 4th to November 14th of this year. And as you notice, it's 10 days door to door. But with that said, you still don't need to take any personal time off, because the way that we build our trips is that we use all of your volunteer time off as well as 2 weekends on each end to get you through the travel and kind of settling in part of the trip. So this trip will just take all of your VTO and none of your personal time off. So just to kind of clarify that. We're going to be volunteering in the Uttarakhand region in northern India. It has a population of over 10 million people. It is considered a key spiritual pilgrimage place and a spiritual place for Hindus in India and all around the world. And it's actually considered the birthplace of yoga. So it has this really strong kind of spiritual Hindu undertone, and it's a really unique to be in India. In terms of the economy, it's mostly agriculture. It's fairly an underdeveloped community and state, but tourism is one economy that exists because they're at the base of the Himalayas. So lots of tourists kind of come in and move through the district as they're trying to climb or visit the Himalayas. And the IT sector is a developing sector. It's just not as big as some of the bigger cities in India, such as Delhi and Bombay. But it's existing and it's developing in the region. And 4 out of 10 women are illiterate, which kind of paints a picture of the type of situation and the type of community that we would be walking in, and some of the challenges that these communities experience because of the lack of focus on education. We are going to be partnering with an organization called IT Hands. IT Hands is a tech social enterprise that employs over 60 people. It was started by 2 American guys, Matt and Stan. who created this business because they wanted to provide young people with software jobs in India to keep them in their joint families. So a lot of families around the world live in a joint family structure, which means that you have multi-generations under one roof. So you have the kids, you have the parents, and you have the grandparents, and the younger generation usually takes care of the older generation. But because people were moving out of the district to find a better job, the joint family structure was breaking, and there was no one left to take care of the older generation. So Matt and Stan started this business to keep young people in and to keep the joint family structure and to enable these young people to make a difference in these communities. But then the second thing that they do is that they bring people into their companies that don't have a lot of experience in the IT sector or don't really qualify to have jobs in the IT sector. And then they give them internships, they teach them, they invest in them, and if they work out, they will keep them on their company. So it's a really great company and a social enterprise to be collaborating with. They have two offices in Dehradun and Haridwar. And we will be mostly volunteering in the Dehradun office. Dehradun is the capital of Uttarakhand, so there's more organizations to volunteer with as we are there. However, some of our volunteer activities will happen in Haridwar as well, and they're about a 2.5-hour drive from each other, just depending on traffic and the elements that day, I guess. While we're in India, we're going to be focusing on 3 main initiatives. And the first initiative is that we're going to be volunteering at a school and a local orphanage. IT Hand partners with a lot of local community organizations, and there's an orphanage and a local school that asked us to come in and work with them and volunteer with them. The details of that project are still developing. We really want to understand how can we benefit the school with what skills and what kind of abilities we bring to the table. So we might be teaching English, we might be teaching computers, we might be running day camps or spending time with the children or taking on a project like painting a classroom or anything like that. But that's kind of still developing, and whatever we do, we will do it in collaboration with the school, with the local community, and with the children. And the second initiative that we are looking at is what we're calling Tech for Good Volunteering. So IT Hand, as a social enterprise, a part of their mission is to impact India positively through technology. So they've brought in this all-women developer team, and they said, we need you to develop an app that would impact India positively through technology. And so these women developers and testers and engineers kind of went away and thought about what app could they develop, what is the need that they could, or the pain points that they could solve through technology. And they realized that one of the bigger issues was around child mortality rates and mothers' health. So there's a lot of cultural misconceptions when it comes to, for example, breastfeeding. A lot of people stop feeding their children natural, like their mother's breast milk, and they start buying formula because they think that, oh, because I'm buying formula and that's expensive, then I obviously care for my child more. Or maybe I should start buying cow milk instead of natural milk for my baby, because culturally that's perceived as better. And so a lot of times what happened is that if you buy formula, you mix it with water, sometimes you end up mixing it with contaminated water. The child might get really, really sick. They might get diarrhea, which is the #1 cause for child mortality rate if the diarrhea was really bad. So they thought about an app that would help disseminate the right information about how to take care of your child's health and your own health to minimize child mortality rates. And they developed this really great app. It's translated into Hindi with resources from the, World Health Organization and UNICEF and other really credible organizations on the topic. But the issue right now is that they're only getting 1 download a day. So one of the things that we'll be focusing on when we're there is pulling together this women's team, pulling together our volunteer team, and then talking about how can we get more downloads? How can we get more adoption? So we want to talk to the developers. We want to talk to mothers who are the potential users of the app. We want to talk to doctors, and we want to try to figure out the adoption nut for this particular app. And finally, one of the things that we'll be doing is the leadership training day or a development day, because we figured, you know, we have incredible volunteers from a Fortune 500 company in North America, as well as all these employees from a tech social enterprise in India. So there's ample opportunity for knowledge exchange, for cultural exchange, and so we want to lead this development day on the ground with discussion and material that will be provided by Venture to Impact and IT Hands. While we're in India, we're going to be staying at various hotels, and it'll be basically 2 volunteers of the same gender in the same room. And our diet will be a mixture of Indian and Western cuisine. So when we're at the hotels, you know, there's going to be lots of Western options. But when we're out and about, sometimes we might end up eating Indian food, or there's fast food options. So there's lots of options around, and we can accommodate all dietary concerns. The last day of the trip, or of the volunteer trip, is what we like to call the one-day debrief. So a lot of times you wrap up a really busy work schedule to get on your VTO. So you get into your VTO, you get immersed into the community, you start doing work right away, and then post-VTO, you jump back into work, you jump back into your life. And what we like to do is give you the opportunity before you head home to reflect, to process the experience, to discuss it with the other volunteers, with Venture to Impact, and that way you have this opportunity to kind of really figure out what this experience meant for you and why it was important for you to be there, and what are you going to do in the impact ecosystem when you head home. So just an opportunity for you to process and to kind of think through the experience. And as we're doing that, there's usually an opportunity for a cultural exploration. So in Ecuador, we went through a huge open market. You know, here we'll try to find one thing that we want to do as a team. So whether it's like a hike in the Himalayas, or visit the Taj Mahal, or an alternative, it would be something that we would all kind of think through and decide on as a team. So if you're interested in this trip, just follow this link/V2I volunteers, and then fill it out. It takes about 5 minutes to fill out. Then we would just ask you to donate $500 to confirm your spot. And that's just like a donation, so we can know that you're in 100%, like do all that stuff for you. We would ask you to check with your doctor just in case you need any vaccinations or you need to update anything. Then we will book your flights, arrange your accommodations, confirm your itinerary, and then we would meet you in India on November 4th. So that's kind of the November 4th India VTO. I've decided to touch base on the overall program commitment at the end, just because the program commitment for India and Indonesia is the same. And so, you know, just bear with me in that in case questions are going to come up. Oh, hi, Allison. Yeah, no, that's a great question. The total donation is, if you want to utilize your match, is $3,500, but the $500 is just your kind of initial commitment to say that you're in. So it's a $7,000 engagement with the match. So your commitment would be $3,500. The volunteer opportunity in Indonesia is a little bit different. We were in Indonesia about 3 months ago, and we were working with island populations all over Indonesia. So in northern Indonesia, there's about 3,000 islands, and 1,500 of these islands are inhabited, and they are isolated, disconnected, marginalized, and very underserved. So we went to these communities, and we started to do different volunteer programs with them. So we kind of taught English, we did day camps, and while we're doing that, we started to ask community members and community leaders, how can we help you? What do you think we could provide for you in terms of help and structure as an organization that's interested in this region? So the villagers and the islanders shared with us these three main challenges. It was access, education, and new ways to generate revenue in the economy. So because they're so isolated and so disconnected, they really have a problem to access things that we take for granted, like electricity or fresh water or healthcare. And when you don't have electricity, you don't know how much you're isolated, how much more you have, how much less you have access to in terms of stuff. I mean, right now we're all connected through electricity and the internet, and that's just something that they could never dream of because they're so isolated, so disconnected, and so spread out. The second thing is education. So many islands don't have anything post primary school because they're so small, and so it's really expensive to maintain more than one school on each island. And a lot of times if people want to pursue education, then they'll have to go from one island, from small island to a bigger island to a bigger island, and eventually leaving the entire district. And what that causes is a sense of like, wow, that's way too much. This is way too much money. I can't afford that. And the second thing is, well, what's the point? I'm only going to end up in fishing or farming. So people don't value education. And so if access was available, if you hook them up to the internet right now, they still won't be able to take advantage of what comes out of that because they're so isolated and they're so disconnected. And then the last one is new ways to generate income in their economy. So because they're isolated, because they're disconnected, because they don't have access to things like electricity and healthcare and new jobs, and because they're not educated to tap into new types of economy, they complain and they think, man, it would be really great for us to generate new ways of attracting revenue in our economy and in our villages. So what we decided to do is pull together something we're calling Idea Force Skilled VTO. And Idea Force is all about us learning more about these issues. So we want to go in and we want to learn more about these issues. In the next couple months, we'll be launching a full survey that we're hoping to get 1,000 people to fill that would speak more to the issues that they've identified, issues of access, education, and new ways of generating income into the economy. We want to ask them about what do they mean when they say we need better education, or what kind of access do they need? Because we're sure that the jobs that they want, the economy that they want to create is different than what we have in mind and what we're used to. So we want to learn from them. We want to get data that kind of explains a little bit more about these sentiments and the things that they've expressed with us. And then we want to go into Indonesia and we want to sit with these villagers. We want to go into their homes. We want to have meals with them. And we want to talk to them about these surveys and about the data and kind of get the collective piece of the data. We want to get the stories. We want to get, what do they mean? What are the stories that are attached to these pieces of data? What is the soul of this data? And then we want to go back into Tulunas where we're going to be staying, and we're going to break into groups, and we want to discuss what we've learned from the community, and we want to start to brainstorm different ideas that would solve some of the problems that they've expressed with us and that the data kind of alluded to. So we want to brainstorm many ideas, and then from there we want to take the best of the best, the strongest ideas, and we want to build an MVP, we want to build a framework, we want to build a pilot project, we want to build something that would say, okay, based on these ideas, we're going to go with this idea, and then this is how we're going to execute it. This is how we'll build it. And then when we build something, when we build a framework, when we build the MVP, we're going to bring in the community, and we say, guys, we've heard you, we've heard your concerns, we've heard what you've said, and this is what we've came up with. And we want you to test it, we want you to play with it, we want you to provide feedback for it. And then from there, we'll determine next steps. So whether as a volunteer cohort, we want to stay involved and we want to continue to help them, or whether our partners in the community will continue to work this, or whether we plan an idea for V2O.2, whatever it is, we will kind of plan it out with the community, discuss it, and then kind of go from there. Maybe you're thinking, you know what, I'm not an idea person, or I don't know if this is for me. But, you know, one thing that we really want to emphasize, that Idea Force is for everybody. Idea Force, you know, is trying to gather people with wide skills of talents and skills and interests. Maybe you want to develop your skills in engineering, in project management, in, you know, big picture thinking and planning. Maybe you're someone that does that stuff day to day at work, but wants to do it for a purpose, for good. So you're invited to join. But if you're someone that wants to develop these skills, someone that wants to work on these skills and be surrounded by people that work on that stuff, just, you know, just remember that Idea Force is trying to bring a wide range of people, not just, you know, the technical people, the engineers, or the kind of project managers, or the leaders within an organization or a team. We're going to be partnering with an organization called Salunas, and they are a geo resort in Indonesia that have been there since 2004. So they're highly connected in the community. They employ over 100 staff, so people love working with them. People are very responsive to a relationship with Salunas and to all the kind of guests and the development initiatives that Salunas spearheads in the community. It is an amazing, a comfortable living space for us to live and work in. We'll have electricity, we'll have connection, and we'll have great views as well. And they'll have a great kitchen with amazing staff and amazing Western and Asian cuisine. And I'm just going to click on the link really quickly. It's taking a minute here, but I think it's worth it just to show you guys where we'll be staying in Salunas and what Salunas actually looks like, just so you get a better picture. So we'll be staying in these huts back there. So it'll be 3 volunteers per room. They're quite big huts. Right here is where we'll have breakfast, as well as a really great work room. You know, you're surrounded by a view of all the islands and the ocean. And then back here as well is another workspace type of conference room, and this is a jumping deck, which is one of my favorite parts at Salunas. So that's kind of Salunas, and that's where we'll be staying. If you're interested in that, we're recruiting for that already. We have started to accept people, but we're hoping to close the round of recruitment by end of October. So just go on the same form, bit.ly/V2I volunteers. And you can find a really quick form that you can fill out. It takes, you know, less than 5 minutes. Then we'll ask you to donate the $500 to confirm your spot. You know, the same procedure. Check with your doctor in case you need any vaccinations. I didn't need any this year. Then the V2I team we will book your trip, arrange your accommodations, confirm your flight, and we will meet you in Indonesia. In terms of a program cost for Indonesia or India, the commitment is $7,000, and that includes round trip flight and hotels while in transit. So for Indonesia, for example, we had to stay in Singapore this year, so that would be included. All your in-country transportation, so taxis, trains, ferry rides, you know, whatever it is, accommodations and meals in country, and all the cultural integration activities in country and on the island. And Venture to Impact accepts employee donation matching. So if you choose to tap into your Salesforce $5,000 donation matching, then your commitment would be $3,500 tax receivable. And what Salesforce is changing, or Salesforce.org is changing in the next week, starting July 1st, is that right now the match is $5,000, and they'll match up to $5,000, and they'll match up to $5,000 instantly. But starting July 1st, they will start. They will kind of phase the matching approach. Your first $2,500 get matched directly. The following $2,500 get matched only if you finish your VTO time. So for the purposes of our volunteer experiences, this should not be an issue. We will, you will use all of your VTO days during the volunteer experience, and then after you come back from India or Indonesia, you can submit a request to match the outstanding $1,000 that you've already donated, and then we can kind of go from there. So that's no problem on our end. It just phases things out a little bit. Like there will be a lag between the donation matching, but it's not a it's not a big deal on our end at all. There's a few people on the call that have been on our trips. So Tova has been with us in Uganda and Ecuador. Stephanie the same, and Courtney was with us in Ecuador this year. So if you guys have any volunteer related questions or questions from like the volunteer perspective, I'm going to include their contact information in the email that I send out with this recording. So you can reach out to them directly if you have any questions about, you know, what is it like to be a Venture to Impact volunteer. I think this is the end of the webinar. You know, if you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat box, or I can unmute people right now. Either way is fine. Oh, Vikas has a question. He says, after filling up the form, how soon should we know that we're selected? Vikas, yeah, we after you fill out the form, we'll just get a notification. Then we'll give you a call. We'll talk a little bit. We'll ask you a little bit more about why you chose to volunteer with us. Have you done any VTOs before? Just a few questions to get to know you, and then we can move through the next steps. Because you are a part of Salesforce, as long as you have your manager's approval to get the VTO time, then the process on our end is very easy. How many spots are still available for each one? So for India, we still have 5 spots available. For Indonesia, because we are looking to have a larger number, we have many, and we just started recruiting, so we have many spots available if you're interested in Indonesia. But for India, we have 5 spots available. And no, you do not have to be with Salesforce to be a part of this volunteer experience. Yeah, the volunteer experience is open for everybody, for sure. And if someone works with another organization that does donation matching, then we can accept that as well, because we have charitable status in the U.S. and Canada, or we partner with organizations that have charitable status in the U.S. and Canada. Okay. Well, if you guys don't have any other questions, I will stop